And we are live. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 1 of the Azure SDK Community Standup. My name is Héctor Norzagaray, and I'm a product manager with the Azure SDK team. I am the PM for JavaScript, TypeScript languages, and also I work with three services like Azure Container Registry, Key Vault, and Cognitive Search. We're excited to have you join us as we discuss the latest updates and developments in the Azure SDK world. In this session, we will be introducing our team and giving you a behind-the-scenes look at what we do. Uh, you'll get to meet some of the talented individuals to make up the Azure team and learn more about the technologies and tools we use to create and maintain the Azure SDKs. Whether you're an experienced Azure developer or just starting out with Azure, we invite you to join us for an informative and engaging discussion. Let's get started. So today, we want to talk a little bit about what is an Azure SDK, why we should use an Azure SDK. And for today, I invited two of the team members from the Azure SDK team, and I'm going to bring them to the stream. Let's go with, hey, Rohit.
Hey.
Hey, Sandeep.
Hey.
So we're live. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting us.
Excited to be here.
Yeah. Can you give a brief introduction of who you are and what do you do?
I'll start. Hi, everyone. I'm Rohit. I am a PM on the Azure SDK team. My specialties are the SDK for Python, the storage service, the machine learning service, and I also work with our visibility in the Azure portal and our customer satisfaction surveys.
Hi, I'm Sandeep, and I work with Java and Go SDKs. And apart from that, I also work with Event Grid and Schema Registry for Event Hubs.
Nice. I wanted to mention that we only had 3 of the PMs that make up the Azure SDK team today. But as you can see, we have a list of the people working on the team and who are in charge of several languages, several services. And you can see here, I made a trick or a decision to put their Twitter handle just in case you want to talk directly to them, you know where to find them. And yeah, so, okay. Let's get back to business. Let's see. We're gonna go and talk a little bit about what is an Azure SDK and what is important about that. Is there something you can tell us about that, Sandeep?
Yeah, so Azure SDK, as the name suggests, is a SDK, basically a client library, which we want our customers to take hard dependency on. So it's client libraries with which you can manage resources in Azure as well as interact with resources on Azure. Uh, Earlier, you used to have a single SDKs or client libraries for every service. Now we have a mono repo for every language. So you'll find it in the links like Azure SDK for Go. So that's a Go library. And it's idiomatic for all the languages. All the libraries are open sourced with MIT license, so you can use it for your commercial apps, and we want you to use it for the commercial apps. And we are being distributed by all the major package managers like NuGet for C#, Maven for Java, NPM, and PyPI, etc., etc. Yeah.
Nice. But why are we building the Azure SDKs or the new Azure SDKs? Why do we invest time in that one? Rohit, do you have a comment?
Yeah, so above everything, developer productivity is the primary objective. We try to create libraries that are idiomatic and natural to use. We want the consistency of your experience to traverse across languages and services. We want our libraries to be approachable, meaning you spend less time figuring things out and more time focusing on delivering value through your applications in Azure. And that also includes things like making sure you can observe your applications in the cloud and making sure that nothing breaks out of the blue. So in short, we want to make sure that you have a very seamless developer experience with Azure and can spend more time focusing on the code that matters as opposed to things that you have to set up and all that stuff. So you'll see an example of that shortly, but in short, that's it.
Nice. I have just a quick question. Are all the Azure SDKs or all the SDKs the same?
Actually, no. Like in theory, there are language SDKs, and each SDK is divided into two sections, like by their usage. One type of SDK is called management plane SDK, which is more like how do you create and manage resources on Azure. Typically, in a general large size organization, you generally have infrastructure as code. You maintain and maintain your code as your infrastructure as code. And you generally use something like, let's say, Terraform or Pulumi, or maybe you're using ARM templates or even Biceps, right, to create and manage your Azure resources. What management plane SDK does is it does not go through any of these template systems. It's a direct client library with which you can actually manage your Azure resources in your own native language. So if you're a JavaScript developer, you can actually spin up a VM using JavaScript, not going through Terraform at all. So it's basically meeting the developers where they are. So you don't have to be experts in Terraform or something. You can just use JavaScript to deploy your application or actually spin up resources. And Rohit, why don't you tell more about the data plane side?
Sure. So the data plane is what you use to interact with your Azure services now that they exist in the cloud. So for example, if you want to send a message to one of our event messaging services like Event Hubs, you can do that. You can store a file on storage account, or query a Cosmos DB, or authenticate with AAD. Generally, you would use our SDKs in lieu of the service REST API. And we'll show you why you could do that with our demos, but we'll also have a few reasons on the screen as well.
Nice. Well, why don't you give us a quick showcase about that? And you prepared something for today, right?
Yes, I did. Let me know if you can see my VS Code.
We can see it now.
Great. So this is just a short, under 50 lines of Python code script that I created, just showcasing our SDK, specifically the storage service SDK. So starting with the first few lines, we import our necessary files and libraries. Then we get our environment variables containing the Azure storage container name that we want to use and the connection string. You can use our Azure Identity Library as well instead of the connection string, but I figured I wouldn't spoil future content, so I went ahead and used the connection string. So getting into this try block here, we create the blob service client object using the connection string that we have. In short, this script will upload and download that same file. So if you look up here in the top left, we have our data folder. We have this text file which says, "Welcome to the Azure SDK Community Standup." So we're going to upload that and then re-download it into this folder here. So like I said, we're going to create this blob service client object using our connection string. Again, you could use our Azure Identity Libraries, but no spoilers here yet. We have the file to upload, so we go into our, we get the name of the text file. We join that using the OS library to get our path for the file itself. We then have a short print statement saying we're going to upload this file to the blob, and then we start using that service client that we created. So using the service client, we use the get blob client method. We pass in our container name, and we pass in the file name, and that will create the client used to interact with the blob itself. And this blob can exist. It doesn't have to exist yet. Like in this case, it doesn't have to exist. So with that, we're ready to go. So we use the with statement in Python to handle file streams. And then we just upload the file that we have here. After that, we're going to download the file. So we call the file that we'll download download.txt. We'll again join the path of our data directory with the name of the file. And then in this case, we'll use the container client because you could actually use the blob service client, but I wanted to showcase the container client as well. For those of you new to Azure Storage, the blob service client is used to interact with the Azure service. The container client is a client for a specific container in that blob service, and then the blob client is used to interact with that specific blob. So the blob client here was for our specific blob here. The blob service client up here was to interact with the overall service. So we're using that same client again, talking to the service, getting the container client for the specific container, again with the container name. And then we do something similar. So we print downloading blob and we add the path. And then again, with statement in Python, we are ready to go. We run this code and we use the download blob method from with our container client. We pass in our local file name. This will pass back a stream of our file. This is a specific object within our storage library. We use the read all method to get everything in that, and then we write it. After that, we should see our file appear in the data directory. So without any further ado, I guess we can just run this. So let me type that. Python storage demo.py. And once I run this, we're going to expect to see the print statements of uploading and downloading, and then everything else will work in the background. Great. So we see that the print statement went down, and we also have the print statement showing our download. So if we go into our data directory over here, we can see that we have the welcome to the Azure SDK community stand-up. So that was a short demo of our storage library. And again, in under 30 lines of Python code, there are more spaces in this file than there are lines of Python. So super easy to interact with our Azure services. All the authentication and everything is handled through our library. And yeah, if you want to get started or start using these libraries, you can start using our GitHub. You can go on our GitHub pages for our respective language, find the service that you want to interact with, and from there should be tutorials, quick starts, and everything you need to use the library.
And I want you to notice that Rohit was being a good dev and didn't forget his comments. He did his code comments properly, and hopefully he'll generate docs as well.
I noticed that. And one of the things that I was thinking is I work with JavaScript, right? And do I expect similar functionality for all the SDKs? So that's one of the things, right? Like when you make an SDK, we're trying to do it in all the languages. Sandeep, you are the Java developer and the Java PM, actually. Do you want to show us how you would do it with Java?
Yeah, I would, but I would rather start with imagining a world where there is no SDK, right? So try to show what if there is no SDK, how would you achieve the same things? Because all these APIs we have, all these services we have REST APIs, right? Like the storage account, the blobs had a REST API. You could connect via REST APIs. Then the question arises, why should I use SDK? So let's see what does a world look like without an SDK, right? Without an Azure SDK. So I've written some Java code on VS Code, and yeah, let's go in and look at it. It's a simple Java project. The POM file is pretty clean, doesn't have anything, no dependencies apart from JUnit. Again, I was trying to be a good developer and writing unit tests. So I hope you clap for me. But then in the Java class, again, I read my property files, and if there is no property file, it fails. That's what this code is about. Second is I wrote a REST client class in which I actually get the content using REST APIs, right? So I go to my REST client class. I create a date formatter because we need a specific kind of date header. I use the standard newer Java 8 plus HTTP client. And in that, I build the clients and I add the headers. And I also need an authorization header. So that's where this guy comes in. Now this is scary, and it is scary. It took me a long time to build it. For authorization header, we need this kind of pattern. We build this pattern and fill it with the length of the text we are going to receive, the request method, in this case it's get, and if match is for query strings. We are not using query strings, so it will be empty right now. And then I have to do canonicalized headers and canonicalized resources, and you can read all about it in canonicalized structures in Wikipedia as well. And it's a pain, it's hard. I have to pass MD5 of the file, and I have to do the content type, right? So your question might be, how would I know these things before actually hitting the file? Actually, I would get these things by doing a head on the resource, getting all these headers, and then encoding the header again. So it's a two-step process. And that's not all. After computing that, I have to compute a hash of the signature. and then append it to the signature string. And as I said, this is how I'm building canonicalized headers. And also one of the things in canonicalizing is it is sorted by name. So if your header starts with a Z, it has to be last. So you have to do that sorting as well. So a lot of work. Similar thing for canonicalized resources. A lot of things are like kind of commented out here because like it is different for everything. And again, I didn't want to write a lot of code just to do one thing. uh, and then you compute the hash with SHA-256, and then you get a kind of authorization header which you pass it with on the REST client. But enough talking, let's run this guy. And okay, let me first here the I mistyped, right? Let me just build it for a sec. And I should see a jar here. And another reason I made it a executable jar, because that's what people do in production, right? They generally do a jar, make it executable, dump it in a Docker container, and run it on Kubernetes. So I wanted to be more or less like prod. So let's run this. And I got welcome to Azure SDK community stand-up. It's exactly the file which Rohit uploaded. And I configured it here in my config properties here, right? So that's pretty much how would you do in if you would not have any SDK, right? So as you see, even for getting the file, it's a lot of work, and there's no logging here, right? There was no logs at all. I have to configure my log and all those things. So I don't know why you would do it. I would never do it apart from this demo. But so let's look at how you do it in case you have a Java SDK, a beautiful SDK created in Java. So you start with just adding your dependency, right? So what we do in Java is we have a BOM here. So we have bill of materials, and so your dependencies always stay in a specific spec and version. Once you import your BOM, then you can import your dependencies, and that's pretty much it. Nothing else was added. Everything is mostly about building. So after your dependencies got added, what I've done is like I want to log. So I configured my log4j properties here. This is how it will log out, right? And this is my configuration property. This is the file name I'm going to download. This is the container name, and this is the connection string. Again, not spoiling for passwordless connections, which will come later using Active Directory, but right now connection strings. So in app.java, what am I doing in app.java? Again, reading the configuration files. If it's not present, erroring out. Then just to have separation of concern, I created a blob SDK client, and it will initiate my SDK interaction. It will do its stuff and then return me the contents of the blob, and I'll print it out. So now you'll see a stark difference here, right? I created a logger here, and what kind of log options I am doing? I'm doing HTTP logs, and I'm doing all kind of logs, right? I'm logging body as well as I'm logging header, and I'm just building the client. If you see here, I'm building the blob service client, which is same as Python, what Rohit showed us. This interacts with the service. Name is also similar. So in unlike in Python, we use builder patterns here. So we are building it here with a connection string and setting the log and building the client. Similar to Python, we have another container client, which we can get from the service client. Pretty much the same name, just more camel case here. Once we got the container client, from there I can pass the blob name and get the blob client. Blob client is a type of client. Blob client, you can get more types of client, right? Depending on what kind of things you're looking at inside the container. One thing I want you to focus on is same names across languages, right? Just a bit of difference just to keep them idiomatic, but same names. If you're running it on Python, I'm sure you can kind of figure it out on Java as well. So once I got the client, I'm just passing it, getting the response, passing it in input stream, and then dumping it at an byte array through output stream and converting it into string and dumping the content back to my app, which prints it out. And enough talking. Let's. I'm in a different directory. So let me just build, just to make sure I'm using the latest code, not some old stuff. And I have set up Maven so that I get a jar with dependencies, a fat jar, if you may say, so that I can run it like on its own. And that's it. I'm going to run it. So I ran it. You saw there is a lot of text here, which is info logs, and then there's the text out here. Now, you know what? I don't like these many info logs. I hate it. I don't want to log anything. So why don't I get rid of the logs here? I can do it by changing the level in resources here as well, or I can just completely block out here, right? I can, like, I'm showing you the code part because like it's kind of easy to do from the code, as well as it is easy to do from the property files as well. And let's run it. And now I ran it and it came without the logs, right? Like, let me clean it, let me clear it out and run again so that it looks better. So now this was just the thing without any logs, and like, ignore the warnings. Devs don't care about warnings anyways. We live only for errors. So you can change the logging also from here as well, right? Instead of info, you can just print out errors and whatnot. And also, like, you can change the specific type of logs from here as well. So I don't want to log body and headers. I just want to log headers, right? And if I just do headers and do a build again, and run it, I'll just get just the header logs, right? Let me clean. And if you see here, it's just printing out the header. It's not printing out a lot of body and all that. So there is a lot of customizations you can do, which comes in inbuilt here. And the thing to note here is it's so easy to do it. I would rather do this than this thing. And especially I hate this guy, the auth helper. Like, I don't want to deal with hashes and all that. I just want to do my business. Like, all this thing is scaffolding. I know, like, there is chat GPT to generate all these things, but would you rather focus on your business or play with chat GPT? Although I know it's hip to write love letters with chat GPT on Valentine's Day, but I guess just focus on your business and just do this thing and make it work. I think that's all I had for the demo
Thank you
or the
so much.
showcase.
That was pretty cool to see the difference between doing it manually and using an SDK, because I'm sure it adds extra layers, right? Let's talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that. There's a couple of points that we wanted to mention in there. Rohit, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I hinted to it earlier. Sandeep and I have shown our demos, which shows why you should use the Azure SDK, but I figured it would be helpful to list them all out here. First, you saw there was a whole file dedicated entirely for authentication in Sandeep's code previously without using the SDK. Our SDKs come pre-baked with authentication logic, so you don't need to worry about any of that. You don't even need to worry about connection strings if you use our identity libraries. No spoilers yet, though. You can look forward to that. The retry mechanisms for our APIs are already taken care of in the SDKs, so that's another thing you don't have to worry about. Our SDKs are memory profiled and stress tested, so performance is a top priority for us, so you don't need to worry about that either. We release our SDKs with updates that will stay in sync with the service API, so as our Azure services improve and get more features, so will our SDKs, so you can keep up with that as well. And lastly, our SDKs are open source. So you can go to our GitHubs right now for our various languages. You can specify a specific service that you want to talk about, and you can contribute and raise issues, and we'll get on it. So there's plenty of reasons why you'd want to use an Azure SDK.
And I would like to focus on the fact that GitHub, go to GitHub, create feature requests, like create issues, add feature requests. Like I know a lot of you go to Stack Overflow, even I go to Stack Overflow, but that's not the right place to like go and talk about stuff, because it's good to go and talk about stuff there, but it's not a good place to raise feature requests, because as a PM on SDK team, I cannot like go down and look at all the feature requests and mind that. I would recommend come to GitHub, add a feature request, and like we'll get back to you. No matter what it is, we'll get back to you. You'll see engagement there. You can rant about issue on GitHub as well, and we'll try to fix it, or we'll at least give you some indicators how you can overcome that. And yeah, for general questions and all, definitely go ahead and use Stack Overflow. We browse that as well. But for feature request or something you want, just hit us up on GitHub or Twitter, as Hector shared at Twitter. So
Yeah, actually, that's what I was gonna say. Not only in the description of the channel, you should see all the links how to get to all these things, or the majority. We strongly encourage. We want to hear what you're building, what you're doing, what problems you're getting. Right? I mentioned it yesterday. One of my favorite things to say in English is sometimes we can see the forest for the trees. Right? Like we're so involved into development and into making all these services and these features, but we want to see what the people is doing, and that's the whole idea of having this community. So here are the links. Also, like I mentioned, it's going to be in the bottom in the description. But Sandeep mentioned something interesting. I want to make sure that not only you go into all of these places, but also I encourage you to go to Twitter and go and try to get a conversation with us. You can always go to at Azure SDK on Twitter and just send a generic question in there if you don't remember who's the person working on what. But we do pay attention to that one. Like I said, GitHub is also a good place, but we have Twitter. And you can just go in there. A lot of us have the Twitter in there. So if you have an issue with JavaScript, with TypeScript, with Key Vault, with Azure Container Registry, you can always ping me there, and I'll be happy to try to go and find out somebody that can help us with that. Yeah, something else you would like to add?
I'd like to add that Azure SDK itself has a Twitter account, and it's at Azure SDK. You can tweet to that as well. And yeah, pretty much like reach us out, find us, raise awareness among your friends. If you use Azure SDK, maybe, yeah, go to a party and say, hey, do you know about Azure SDK? Or, yeah.
Yeah,
Instead
like,
of writing love letters today, how about you write libraries with our SDK?
I'm
Yeah,
sure
I
that-
think for Valentine's Day, love letter should be taken care by ChatGPT. Just go and use it. They write amazing like love letters, and yeah, just use it. Use tech.
yeah. So I noticed that you both have a comment by Timothy saying hello, Sandeep, and hello, Rohit.
Hello.
Hello, Timothy.
The other thing that I wanted to mention is that we're planning to be here every month, and guess what? Next month is March 14. So it's going to be during Pi Day, our next episode. So we have a couple of things in the works that are very interesting for us. So please follow either the channel or follow, well, both the channel and the Twitter handle, so you can get on top of what is coming. And also, I will be sending a form where you can talk about what you would like to see, what you would like us to talk about in following episodes. But in the meantime, we will be getting ready for the next one, and it will be published in the next couple of days. At least it will be scheduled, and you'll see what we're going to be talking in the next couple of shows. But yep, until then, anybody else has anything to say? Anybody has a question from the audience before we leave? This is the moment. I know Mike clapped, so I'm really happy to see that Mike clapped. He only gave us one clap, though. Maybe next month we'll talk about something that will generate more claps.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, well, this is all for today's show. We wanted to make sure that you were informed about what we do. I want to make sure that stress this. We really want you to be part of shaping Azure SDK, and there are several ways of doing that. You can go to these sites to see where you can actually contribute, give feedback in the Azure GitHub. You can read the blog. You can subscribe. You can contribute. You can use the SDKs. And actually, something that I forgot to mention, and this is a very important one. We're going to be talking about. This is what we released in February, actually. So we did initial stable is Azure Blob Storage for Go, Azure Bot Services management libraries for Go, Azure load testing and management libraries for .NET, Java, JavaScript, Python, and Go, Azure machine learning management libraries for .NET, Azure Monitor Query for Go. This is the initial stable that we released this month, and the initial betas. We have Azure Container Registry for Go, Go. uh, Azure Mobile Network Management Libraries for .NET, Azure Networking Services Management Libraries for JavaScript, Python, and Go, and Azure OpenAI Inference for .NET. This is the latest, greatest thing that we've developed this month, and every month we will be letting you know what's going on. You can always go to the Azure SDK GitHub to go and find these new features or new releases, and we'll be more than happy to hear what you think about them. What are you looking at? If you have any issues with the documentation, with implementing something or any bugs, just let us know and we'll be participating from that. So for now, unless Sandeep,
Uh,
Rohit, yep.
Yeah, I like to add that add on what Hector said. Like interacting with us is extremely important because we try to find out what you do, but the dev community is so huge that we cannot keep track of everything, right? So it would be really helpful if you contact us or raise GitHub issues and ask what you need, and we'll have it there. Like a perfect example is Go libraries. A lot of you raised issues on GitHub asking for Go libraries, and that's why we prioritized some of the Go libraries. So your word has a lot of sway in what we do, so
And just,
please talk to us.
and just remember, this is open source too, and also we're always trying to see what the people need. It's like I've seen go from not having much stuff to being a part of it now, right? And it's becoming one of the big important languages. So well, without anything else in the notes, I think we're ready to wrap up the first ever community stand up for the Azure SDK team. Stay tuned. Like I said, we have a couple of things in the works for the next month. And in between, we will also be sending some content, some demos, or some other things that are happening that we want to share with you guys. So follow our blog, follow our Azure SDK handle on Twitter, and for sure subscribe to this either on Twitch or on YouTube. And we'll be happy to see you on the next one. Take it away, Haley.